Welcome to the Toronto Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host and contributing writer, Kevin Armstrong, joined by my friends Peter Baracchini and the old prof, Jim Parsons, Sr. We get together once a week to discuss. I had to throw the senior in there because your son also does a lot of writing, but yeah, sorry about that. We like to call him the prof anyway, because he's always teaching us something. So we get together every week to discuss stories we're working on, stories that maybe we already published and reaction that we got to it, and things that we see happening with everyone's favorite team to love and hate, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And there was a lot of hate this week. Wow. Just when you think it's going to be a nice week and nothing going to rumble and no one's feathers are going to get ruffled, Auston Matthews gets put on the cover of EA Sports NHL 22, his second appearance in 3 years. You guys know I love Auston Matthews, but to be honest, when it happened in that morning, I actually thought a Toronto fan had made that up and it was making rounds, because I was like, there's no way he's the cover again. Like, there's a lot of great players in this league. How is Auston Matthews the cover for the second time in 3 years? I was amazed. And this, of course, brought out all the hate. There was so much hate against Auston Matthews. Makes me think he's almost public enemy number one out there now. Forget the Tom Wilsons and the Brad Marchands of the world. A lot of people don't like Toronto, as we've talked about on this show. And now they've got the poster boy in their face again, and more hate out there. Peter, I know that you like the video games and the pop culture and everything when it comes to that. What was your reaction when you saw AM34 back on the cover?
Yeah, I saw the Maple Leafs Twitter post a video with the behind the scenes and everything like that. So I'm not going to lie, I was a little surprised. I mean, Auston Matthews does deserve it, but 2 years or 2 times on the cover for 3 years, you don't really see that with a cover athlete. You see, a bit of a cycle with other options. And someone was floating around the David Pastrnak photo of him with the glasses during the Lake Tahoe game, which I thought would have been really great. It's a really great photo of him. Got the swag look going on and everything. It seemed kind of fitting, but to me, yeah, it got a lot of hate from a lot of the fans that aren't Toronto Maple Leaf followers, and I can understand why, because of the whole, there are other athletes out there like Pastrnak, maybe throwing a Leon Draisaitl. Sidney Crosby hasn't been on the cover in, I don't think, ever for EA. So everyone was throwing out their options, and it's gotten to the point where I think people are just looking at it a bit too much. One, it's only a video game cover. It has no significant impact on anything. And two, Auston Matthews is a marketable player. We've seen him be sort of that main figure amongst the younger crowd and the kids coming up. When you look at a player that you want to idolize an Auston Matthews. A lot of the kids that were in my age range were growing up idolizing Alex Ovechkin because of his goal scoring abilities and his ability to score and be that, sniper that you would want to play in a video game. So I think just the fact that he's more marketable than maybe some other players, I don't know, but it's kind of iffy. I mean, I'm happy for him. I think maybe give it to another player, but you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah. I'm thinking it needs to just be the Stanley Cup champs at this point. I liked when it was Taves on the front cover holding the Stanley Cup up. You can't argue that. The captain of the winning team, you get the cover. Like there's almost an extra piece of what you get. Forget going to Disneyland. You get on the cover of the video game. Now, Prof, I know you're not a big video game guy. I know you had the high score on Pong a couple of years back, but when we talk pop culture and the hate around this team already, does this make Auston Matthews public enemy number one now when you saw what came back against those guys? And I'll be back on in a second. The camera just turned off, but I'll be back on in a second. Does it make him public enemy number one?
Oh, I don't even think about it, actually. I did notice that he was on a couple years prior, and that was very interesting to me. But honestly, I have to admit, I'm trying to live. I'm the oldest guy in the world with teenagers. and I'm trying to live to be 100 so I can watch my girls grow up. So I try to avoid negativity any chance I get. So if there's any hate out there, I see it, I turn it off. So I just didn't engage it. Actually, it did strike me though that Matthews is obviously seen around the NHL as one of the key athletes that would be worthy of the cover. And I wondered whether, as I read the way the game had changed into NHL 22, whether that fitted his stuff. They've given what are called zone abilities to key game-changing players, and I think they put his sort of curl and drag coming out of a deke as part of the game. So I thought perhaps he exemplified that to a core in ways that great players like Sidney Crosby, who are known as just hard workers, et cetera, don't have that same offensive ability. So it struck me that might have been what was happening with that cover, but I don't know. And in fact, as I say, if there's negativity out there, I just turn the other way.
So this might be the podcast version of Kevin Armstrong now. Technical difficulties. Yeah, you can't have this, but for our podcast listeners, this is the best I've ever looked, I can tell you. So also somewhat related to Auston Matthews, news this week that the Arizona Coyotes don't have a home next year. This one, it shouldn't surprise any of us. We've known that Arizona's been in trouble since, the beginning, I guess. But this is also a team that Maple Leafs fans should be very, very happy that it existed, because it's the reason why Auston Matthews is in the NHL right now. He grew up watching the Coyotes, and he had the posters on his bedroom wall. So this is going to have an impact. Also, the Tkachuk brothers were Coyote fans too. So here's some questions. Number one, why did the league not see this coming and expands to Seattle anyway, when they could have relocated a team to Seattle? And we'll start with that one, old Prof. Why is, because we've all seen this coming for so long, why did the league not see this coming?
I think because we've all seen it coming for so long. This is just always happens in Arizona. And I know the stadium really well, and I love watching games there. And I have a house in Phoenix. So, I've often gone to games there. It's one of the great venues. That said, it's a very hard to field a good team in the desert. And it's always been sort of the owners can't pay their bills. And I think the city of Glendale just got tired of going around and around. They couldn't get a commitment. So, and I think no one saw it coming, because it happens every single season that there's something's going on there. And it strikes me that too bad. And I still think it may be posturing, but that things could change, but perhaps they won't. And really, it took a reader of a post. I really didn't put it together, sort of Brian Burke's note that as soon as Matthews was done with his contract here, he'd be on the way to Phoenix. I didn't even think about it. So, that's how tuned in I am to the whole situation. It just struck me, that's the way it always is in Phoenix.
I liked the one reaction I saw is that, great, without Arizona, it means that Matthews will re-sign in Toronto. So, because everyone's pretty sure that he's going to be, he would be headed back to the deserts for sure. But Peter, views on the league not knowing, and should have the Seattle expansion went forward when there's always been this problem in the desert?
To say that Seattle, I guess Seattle was always in the back burner for the NHL for quite some time, but I think they wanted to try and get as much leverage and try to keep Arizona in, with the Coyotes as much as possible, because even the owner is quoted saying that he wants to try and do everything to keep the Coyotes in Arizona and find a permanent arena solution. Whether that happens, it's going to be very difficult, because you're going to have to try and do something in less than a year to try and find a home. And if so, how are you going to build another arena in a different part, like let's say Scottsdale, Auston Matthews' home? Is that even possible? So like you could even like throw out whether it was Seattle, but there's also like talks of Houston, Quebec City possibly being involved as location targets for a relocation for the Coyotes. It's just really interesting. And just to go back on what the Prof said, like we've seen this coming like miles away. They've had so many issues, so many arena or ownership problems, and even in the last few years or so, with contracts with their players and everything like that, it's just gotten to an ugly point right now where I think the city just had enough with everything, and it's just another difficult situation in Arizona right now.
Well, one of the things that we haven't talked about, and I just thought of it as Peter was talking, is now a time for Toronto to have a second team. Because there's the expansion possibilities. You see New York with a couple of teams, you have Los Angeles with a couple of teams. Boy, if there's any city that would support a new team, Toronto might be that city.
The Prof has taken the hosting job this week. Now that I'm not on there, because that was where I was going. Great minds.
Oh, really? I'm
alike.
sorry.
Yeah. No. But you know, it's come up more than once with Toronto having a second team, and also always the talk about Hamilton being so close and being a draw, but it always gets killed. And I don't understand it, because I agree with the Rangers and the Islanders being able to pull it off. And you see in other sport leagues where, you know, New York's got 2 baseball teams, 2 football teams. I realize New York's big, but hockey is bigger when it comes to Toronto. So they could easily support 2 teams. Yeah. But Peter, you followed that before. What's the rationale behind Toronto or Southern Ontario not having another team?
Yeah, for even with talks of like a team going to Markham, Hamilton, and everything like that. I mean, it is close distance because you would probably build another rivalry. Toronto versus Markham, Toronto versus Hamilton, as opposed to just, you know, Toronto versus Buffalo with the QEW series, the Battle of Ontario with Toronto and Ottawa. It would add a great element to it, but I just haven't really found any sticking points of why we should get a second team here in Toronto. I've just always been on the other end where there are other markets that, you know, have a major base that we should be focusing on instead of putting another one in Toronto. I'm always on the bandwagon to bring the Quebec Nordiques back in Quebec City. I think that they deserve a franchise. We've seen how well Halifax has done with the Mooseheads, even though that's a junior hockey team. I think hockey fans out east deserve a team, whether it is even in New Brunswick, Newfoundland, wherever. I think if we want to try and get another Canadian team, it should be in a location where they don't have a major like pro sports team, where they do have juniors, they do have a great fan base, and maybe try to focus in on that.
I'm with you there for Halifax for sure. I think it's a great city, and certainly there would be. It strikes me you're right. I've seen the venue there. It's really quite good. So
it's lucky my camera's off because I'm making faces at you, Peter. Here's my reason why. Like, I get what you mean. This is good exposure. Auston Matthews is the perfect example. If the Coyotes didn't exist, Auston Matthews doesn't exist in hockey. But Toronto is the one that does the payroll for the majority of the league. Without Toronto, and you know what? Toronto's still going to sell out. It's still going to cost hundreds of dollars to go to every game. And guess what? Toronto team number 2 would still sell out and still cost a lot of money to go to as well. And that money then gets funded around throughout the rest of the league, and the whole league is healthy, as opposed to having teams on life support like the Coyotes for the last 2 decades.
No, and that is a fair argument. I mean, I understand the logistics of it, where you could monetize Toronto with 2 major teams, and I totally get that. It's just I've even like with talks of Markham, Hamilton, and everything came about, I always thought of just trying to find like still another major market where it still can be profitable. I mean, everything's going to be profitable in Toronto, no doubt about it. It's just I think fans in Quebec, they deserve a hockey team. Halifax, even Saskatchewan. I've just always been under that impression, just from my point of view.
Mm-hmm. You know which one after the NBA championship I'd love to see the Milwaukee Admirals, the AHL team, turn into an NHL team, because Milwaukee and that setup during the playoffs, thousands of people outside the stadium, That just was awesome. That community really got, and they're very small, but they're also a hockey. You can play hockey outside in the winter in Milwaukee, unlike a lot of these other areas that Bettman likes to expand to. Jim, any final thoughts on that one?
Well, I keep thinking if there's a list of things I shouldn't bring up because I don't want to trot on your work. But
go ahead.
No, gosh, no. The idea, I mean, the Green Bay Packers have sold out. I mean, they're a winter community, and it just strikes me that winter communities support hockey better than sunshine states. So that just seems right. But at the same time, I'm sort of with Peter. I love Eastern Canada. And it strikes me that Eastern Canada could have a team. And I really like the idea of Quebec too. There's such a history there. I think there's more places to expand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe Quebec, it'd be like Winnipeg. When Winnipeg lost the Jets, now that they've returned, they are well supported and seem just fine now. You need to lose them to learn how much I love them, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think the main sticking point too is also going to be the location. So if they are looking to a Central Division team, I know I mentioned Houston, it would probably be easier to keep them in Houston or even Milwaukee. If they are going to be a Central team, they're probably more Central localized to replace Arizona. So they would still remain in that Central Division as opposed to maybe even relocating the Coyotes to possibly out east for Quebec City, or even rearrange sort of one team move from Atlantic to the Metropolitan or Central. So there's also that factor in as well.
Right. This is the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. If you're liking these two guys' faces on there and my black screen, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you're following along on podcast, thank you very much. Make sure to jump in on the iHeartRadio and everywhere else where you get your favorite podcasts. And of course, on your social media channels. So a story this week by the old Prof was on Ondrej Kase and kind of the gamble that the Maple Leafs have taken on this very talented yet concussion-prone player. You take it from there, Jim. I won't play host on you this time. It's your story. Tell us what I've read it twice. Is it you like the fact that this, because you like the human element of these things, and you like the fact that he's going to get some great medical intervention during his time in Toronto. There's no doubt about that. But from a hockey roster point of view, I don't see him adding a lot right away. But you take it from there.
Well, I am naive, but I'm not naive to all the questions around why they should have him. But it strikes me that I really I'm unlike many of our Toronto fans, I'm a Shanahan Dubas supporter. I think they're doing the right things. I think they're doing the process correctly, but I also think they have a heart, and they're going out they're into social activism and social justice. And this strikes me, I know that there's good reasons for having him on the team. He could possibly, if he comes through and is healthy, and I wrote that I think there's an order to this. I imagined the conversation between Kasha, his agent, and Dubas. And I think Dubas went to him and said, "We want you in Toronto, but here's the deal. We know that you're concussion prone. We first want to help you get healthy. We have the medical infrastructure, the team player development, and the medical staff to help you do that. That's our number one priority. Our number two priority is that you make the team and add to it. And once you get healthy, we'll make that happen. And in fact, we'll actually pay you $1.25 million or whatever it is to do that." It strikes me that I know there's the reason to get him from a roster point of view, but I love the humanity of it all. I mean, they could throw this guy out in the street, and where would he be? But he isn't on the street. He's part of the Maple Leafs organization, and the Maple Leafs are going to take care of him. And I absolutely love that about this organization.
Yeah, there's no argument there. And you talked about the medical facility that this organization is able to build. They've got the best training facilities in the league. Peter, do you see this guy adding to the roster? Should we even be thinking about this guy being on ice this year?
Absolutely. Mainly because we small sample, and as Jim mentioned, he's had a long medical history where he's had a number of injuries, mainly concussions, and even like you alluded to, it is a concern, and everyone is pointing out. And even when I made the news piece of the Maple Leafs signing both Richie and Kasha, everyone, like a lot of the comments in the section some of the comments in the section that I read, said that, oh, Richie ain't going to do much for Toronto, and Kasha ain't going to do much for Toronto. He's injured. Well, that's because he hasn't gotten the help that he deserves, Kasha. Richie had statistically one of his better seasons with the Bruins in a third line role. To Kasha's point, he only played 3 games. He was an analytics, a player that, the analytics community really liked. And he did have good underlying numbers in those 3 games until, he missed most of those with a concussion and then another injury later on in the season. This is a guy that he can be a really great middle 6 option. He's strong. He's got great speed. He can establish a forecheck. He's got a great shot. And he put up 20 points in his sophomore season. And I think that was his ceiling. And the fact that he hasn't gotten to that point or hasn't stayed healthy, yeah, it's a concern. But with the contract, 1 year, 1.25, it's a low risk move. If he does well, he's going to get that. And plus, the Maple Leafs have his rights for another year or so. He's got RFA for 1 more year, and they could sign him to a multi-year deal if he does exceed expectations. And I think the fact that, they brought him in, they needed some depth, they needed someone with energy, someone with that killer instinct. He has proven to play with that intensity and that mentality. So I think having him in that third line role, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great thing. And I have him as a player that possibly, if he is healthy 100%, that's the main sticking point. He is going to surprise a lot of players. Is he going to get to that 20-40 mark in the third line? Maybe not, but if he does get 15, 20 goals, 35 points, that would be a really great addition. And I think maybe he's someone that could also help another struggling Maple Leaf right now in Ilya Mikheyev, who has his own, struggles last season and plus the wrist laceration that he suffered. So I think both of them have great qualities and can turn a lot of heads, and I think they can feed off each other.
Yeah. It's a wild card for sure. If you saw
Definitely.
the news this week, Cameron Smith, a linebacker with the Minnesota Vikings, at 24 years old, retired this week after getting a concussion in week 1 of the preseason. This guy missed all last year due to having open heart surgery. Incredible. But week 1 concussion, and he said, that's it. Life's too short to be having this. And that's what I wonder with a lot of these guys.
Absolutely.
He just got a $1.25 million deal. And if you work that right, you can set yourself up and move forward with the next part of your life. So either way, off the ice, we hope the guy the best. I'm really not sure about on the ice, but that's what we're waiting to see as camp gets closer week by week. Now, we're going to switch to the prospects. As we announced on the show last week, Peter Baracchini, and he belongs to us, the Maple Leafs Lounge, before everybody else, but he now heads up the hockey writers prospects and everyone coming through the system league wide now, and the draft. So he sees these guys at a younger age. This tweet this week that you put out kind of surprised me because you listed your Maple Leafs top prospects, top 10, and you've got a 1A and a 1B. The 1A I thought was pretty obvious. I don't think anyone's going to fight the Nick Robertson as number 1 prospect in the system. But 1B, who's that, Peter? And why did you call him a 1B?
It's Rodin Amirov, the 2020 first round pick for the Maple Leafs, 15th overall that they got for Kasperi Kapanen. I did 1A, 1B mainly because I just didn't feel right putting Rodin Amirov as number 2. I mean, he's in neck and neck with Nick Robertson as the top prospect for this system. Nick Robertson's got the speed, he's got the hands, and he's got the shot. We've seen it so many times. He scored 56 goals with the Peterborough Petes last year. despite missing games where I believe he had a broken finger and then going to the World Junior Championships in 2019-20 before the pandemic hit. But Rodion Namirov has taken major strides. I mean, he's got a solid two-way game. He's great on the forecheck and the backcheck, but his skill, his patience, his speed. Just earlier this week, he had the puck and he was just dancing around the whole entire team, and he set up his teammate for a goal. And that, to me, right there, that just solidified him as not just a second overall prospect, but he is a first overall or like top prospect in this system. There is no denying that. I mean, it is odd because I've always gone 1, 2, 3, 4, but in this case, I just had to give it as sort of like a mini tie between both of them because it's hard to choose.
Well, I think you've got a favor because you also switched your your not your profile shot, your cover shot on Twitter to the Amirov point at the net. That I did an article on that during World Juniors because I called it the Leafs got the sign from Amirov when he did the Matthews point at the net. Now, Jim, on this list, we've got I'm calling it Peter's Prospects, copyright right there.
Trademark.
But, we've got Timothy Liljegren in the number 3 spot. Jim, you've seen him play a little bit, and he's been up and down. I'm not convinced that this guy is going to get NHL time. 2 years ago, it looked like it. Last year, not so much. Where are you with that guy, Jim?
I think they should play him. And I don't know whether he's going to be good or not. I've seen him make strides over the past couple of years, I think. He's now sort of taken the AHL and feels very comfortable there. So I think they should give him a chance. And I keep waiting, actually, for the Maple Leafs to give the younger people a chance. And I think they're sort of stuck in this win now sort of mentality. And I think in some ways it might put them behind the 8 ball a little bit because they're not developing their players internally in the organization as much as I would hope they would. That said, I'm not a coach. I don't see him every day, but I'd love to see him get more of a chance. And I really don't know the answer to that. I'm really not one of these guys who's smart enough to watch a youngster play in the AHL and say, oh, he'll do really well. I mean, some you would, but others you don't. So I rely a lot on what other people write about and the analytics and those sort of things to try to make judgments. And I really don't know about Liljegren. I'm sorry to say. Yeah, I trust Peter, though.
I trust Peter too, and obviously the hockey writers brass, they do as well to move him up the way they did. But this tweet is out there now. It's solid. We can now refer back to it and give you heat whenever these guys switch up on you. But I also saw you've got Matthew Knies, who was the 2nd round pick just a couple months ago. You got him in the number 7 spot. Yeah. That says a lot as well. Why? Okay, does that say that the Leafs prospects and farm system, to Jim's point, is watered down, that a 2nd round draft pick in the 50s gets into the top 7 of the prospect list now? Or does that say that they found a diamond in the rough?
I think they found a diamond in the rough, and I think it speaks volume to their scouting department, where they only had 3 picks, didn't pick until 57th overall, and they made that pick count. And granted, they have Ryan Hardy in the system, who, you know, was the GM of the Chicago Steel, saw quite a bit of Matthew Knies at the USHL level. And Knies dealt with his bout of COVID at the beginning of the season. It was a rocky start for him, but he picked his game up. And I know during the prospect recap show, or the draft recap show, when we were talking about Matthew Knies, he's got a power forward body, but he's got so much skill. He's got that two-way mentality. He's got a really great shot, and he really shined for Team USA at the World Junior Summer Showcase, really stepping up to the plate and showing off his skill set in his hands. And I think I'm going to allude to what I mentioned when we first drafted him. He's Zach Hyman with a better hands and better shot. So the fact that they have someone with that ceiling, with that potential, it's going to be great for them, because they need someone with size, they need someone with strength, but still have that skill set that makes them such a dangerous team to play against. I think Matthew Knies jumping into that top 10, to me, it's just a no-brainer.
Good.
Yeah, I don't disagree, actually. I really did my homework on him, and I was surprised, actually. It just struck me, as Peter said, the scouting staff and the hires that the Maple Leafs have made to that staff. I mean, the AHL Coach of the Year, the fellow from the USHL. I mean, they're smart hires. They really get to see the world. And I really thought, why did this guy get not picked earlier than 57? I mean, he was great, I thought.
Yeah, and I like Peter said with the COVID at the beginning, it maybe just knocked a lot of scouts the other way, and Toronto stayed on him. So good on Toronto and good on the system, and let's see this guy develop and keep going. I also really like that kid's media avail. He seemed like a pretty genuine guy and really happy to be doing what he's doing, and he even answered the tough questions of how he had an awful start to a season. And I like watching those. That's why we do what we do here. We like watching these guys develop and come through the system and play for the team that everyone loves to love and hate, your Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, let's do our social media roundup. As we said, there was a lot of hate to start. Well, I guess it always seems like there always is with the Leafs, but so we'll skip that with the Maple Leaf stuff. But I just saw the NHL is trying to generate some conversation today, and they said, if you could wear the jersey, if you had to wear the jersey of your team's rival, what player would it be? Like, that is a very interesting question. So you got to go to the rival team and wear the jersey. So I've got my guy in mind, but I had more time to think about this. So you guys think about it while I say my guy. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm going to wear a Carey Price jersey.
Oh, that's mine.
Oh, all right. Well, I would go with him or with one of the like Guy Lafleur or somebody like that. But for Carey Price, you cannot help but love this guy for his off ice and all the stuff he's done. Obviously, he's done so much for Canada as well, but I would go all in and go with the ultimate rival in the Habs and Carey Price. So Peter, how about you?
I hate to do this because you know my family background story with Montreal and Boston. I hate to do this, but I'm going to go with a Patrice Bergeron jersey, mainly because ever since 2005, and even watching him in jerseys at that junior tournament, I knew he was going to be a star in this league. His two-way play, his smarts, he's one of the brightest players out there. There really is no doubt about that, and he just plays the game with such conviction. He's a great leader on and off the ice. To me, that would be my choice to wear a player's jersey from a rival team.
Jim, I stole yours. Do you have a second one?
No, I would go with Carey Price. I think he's worth mentioning twice. He's a class act in every way. And my own background being First Nations as well, on my grandmother's side of Seneca, I love what he's done for First Nations, Aboriginal people. And it just strikes me, he's always a class act. I've written more posts about Carey Price probably on the Hockey Writers than I may have about Auston Matthews. That's not true, but I've written a number of times about Carey Price. I just can't leave him alone. He's such a good guy, and I love his charitable work, and I love the fact that he and his wife really pull together and support the community in many, many ways. So he's worth mentioning twice. He's absolutely a class act.
Yeah. When I think of Carey Price, I think to years back when it's lucky my camera's off because I might be tearing up even thinking about it, but he met that boy at practice that had lost his, I think it was his father. And Carey not only autographed something and said hello, he sat with him and he hugged him and he talked with him. And it was, it's lucky the camera's off because just thinking about that makes me well up. Okay, Peter, you got anything for the social media roundup?
I do, and in light of Henrik Lundqvist retiring, it was really like I was able to witness, or a lot of us were able to witness, a really great goaltender for the past 15 years. So when he announced his retirement, obviously Roberto Luongo and his Twitter account, Strombone1, had to come out with this, and I'm looking forward to this if it does happen. Two Goats, No Cup podcast. Think about it, Henrik Lundqvist. I am so down for that podcast. I would want to hear what they have to say, and both of them with their personalities and their wits and everything. I would love to see that happen.
Love it. Yeah. And I did see one that was he the best goalie to never win a Stanley Cup. And I have a hard time thinking of another goalie that would have that. And Lundqvist, another class act guy for sure. Now, one that I saw, and I had to even fact check this because I'm like, there's just no way this happened. I feel bad for Marc-Andre Fleury. The guy goes out there, for years. He loses Pittsburgh, goes to Vegas. He puts that franchise on his back, rides into the playoffs, makes one mistake in the playoffs. They get bounced out. Then he gets traded. Oh, he also won a Vezina. Then he gets traded. He doesn't even know if he's going to play. Then he says, you know what? I'm all in. See you soon, Chicago. What does Chicago do? They put up a picture with all the jerseys of all their team that's coming, and they spell his name wrong. Come on. I thought there's no way that actually happened. But yeah, they spelled it Fleury. Fleury.
He's been in the league how long, and you don't know how to spell his last name? His name's all over the NHL pages. I mean, come on.
This isn't hard. And typos happen. I understand typos. We're writers. We do typos. But when you're stitching a jersey, you got to at least double check that before you stitch it. Come on. All right. Prof, did you see anything on your MySpace page today?
Well, you know how much I love this. There's one guy for the Maple Leafs that I'm really, really interested in, and I can't wait to do a post on, and I haven't yet, and that's Curtis Gabriel. He brings something very interesting to this team, and Dubas got him for a reason. And I know his support for LGBTQ work, and I support that too. But he's an interesting guy, and he comes across always on social media when I hear him talk as intelligent, which belies the fact that he's sort of an enforcer guy. So, he's an interesting one, and I'm more interested in watching him and getting to know him a little better. So I'm not sure whether he'll even make the roster or not, but I like the signing. I think he stands for some of the ethos of the Maple Leafs that I too support. So I'm anxious to see what happens with him.
Man, I'm got to say, when you started with that in our social media roundup and saying Curtis Gabriel, well, his girlfriend is well known on social media. That's all I'll say about that.
I have no idea.
Yeah. His girlfriend has got quite a following and an influence, and she's also a goalie, but that's not what gets a lot of attention. But she's an interesting one. Well, I'm going to leave it at that before the show gets knocked off the air. Okay. The last thing I'm going to say is one thing you guys got to look up is the San Jose Sharks inter-squad scrimmage. Daniel Gushchin, his goal is absolutely incredible. That's like cover of a video game worthy. Wow. Just look that up. If my camera didn't go down, I would show you it right now. But see, this is what happens. So anything else, Peter?
That is all for me this week.
That's all for you. And that's all for Jim. Jim took a crack at being a host as well this week.
Wow. Thank you.
One of these times, for sure. Okay.
I can't pull it off.
Yes, of course you can. It's the Maple Leafs Lounge. We make it happen here. Make the unbelievable believable. It's been a fun show. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed my face on the phone for the video. It's been a good time. Thank you very much, Canon camera, for breaking down on me. And make sure you like and subscribe to these podcasts as well, which I'm now the face of, right? So we will see you same time, same place next week for the Maple Leafs Lounge.